You going? Perfect. Welcome to February meeting of Community Board 1. My name is Netta Porchatori and time is 6:06. And we are going to get started with the first item on our agenda, which is the presentation by Downtown Alliance Restore.
Excellent. Do we have a slides? Are we sitting in a good spot for people to see us and hear us?
It's the owl.
Oh, the owl, right.
We should look that way.
I don't know, it's looking at me.
We don't want it to fail. We don't need to be, just our voices.
There we go.
Great. Hello, everyone. Sure everybody knows who I am, Taina Prado from the Downtown Alliance. We're here to give our quarterly update to the Land Use Economic Development Committee of TV1. I just wanted to start tonight off by having some photos up here about Winter Storm Fern. Our operations team spent, many days before, during, and after, working hard to keep the neighborhood clean, do our best to sort of tackle all of the snow. So here are just some photos to show them shoveling, salting sidewalks, clearing intersections across the district, and sort of we're continuing to do that work. And also continuing to work with sanitation department as sort of they continue to try to get rid of the snow with some of the melting machines that they put up across the city. Another thing I wanted to mention today specifically, the Downtown Connection bus today started with brand new buses. They look very much the same like the old ones, but they are newer in terms of the models. The buses were old, and now with the weather being so bad, took a real beating this winter. So the new buses are on the roads today, and we will be installing new bus trackers on all of the buses and then in the coming weeks, which will make it even easier and more user-friendly for folks to track the buses as they're coming along the route. So we'll send a notice to the community board when that's officially effective, but I just wanted to give people a heads up about that. And I'm now going to pass it to Josh to sort of kick off our market update.
Thank you. I'm Josh Nakwitz. I'm the Senior VP for Economic Development at the Downtown Alliance. I'm happy to talk through, I'm going to walk you through what we've been seeing happening in the real estate market in Lower Manhattan over 2025. Starting with the commercial office market, then going through retail and residential. Then I'm going to give you some updates on our upcoming public space activation projects that we're working on for this summer. So just before I get into this, I say this at every time that we do this, all of our data that we're going to walk through tonight is going to be online on our website. It's all free and available for folks to look at and peruse in your own time. One quick caveat on that, we're actually giving you a sneak preview of our 2025 year in review report. So most of the data I'm going to walk through tonight is not available yet. It will be hopefully later on this week. We're planning on releasing that report probably on Thursday. So 2025 was a great year for office leasing in Lower Manhattan. A great year for over the entire economy downtown. If you recall, the last time we were here in 2024, around early in 2025, we were reporting on 2024's numbers, which were extremely bad. 2024 was the worst year of leasing that we have seen in Lower Manhattan since the Downtown Alliance has been tracking those numbers. That market turned around dramatically in 2025. We saw 4.7 million square feet of leasing overall during the year, which is leaps and bounds the best year that we've had since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. It's the best year that we have had in a long time. 2019, the last year before COVID, happened to be an extraordinarily, unusually good year for leasing. So it sort of throws off the numbers and the 5-year averages a little bit. But if you take 2019 out, 2025 was better than most of the years that we see between 2015 and 2017. So it was a great year for the market. Fourth quarter ended up with 1.5 million square feet of leasing. That was a 6% increase at the end of the year, quarter over quarter. We had about 600,000 square feet of relocations, which is about a 4-fold increase in terms of relocation activity from 2024 into 2025. And one thing of note, we'll talk a little bit about some of the big tenants that came downtown. We sort of rebalancing of leasing last year. In the years since COVID, the public sector had been a real driver for leasing activity in Lower Manhattan, which is good for the market. We talk about the public sector as being a sort of counter-cyclical anchor for the office market in Lower Manhattan. It's a great benefit for us to have downtown. The other Manhattan submarkets don't really enjoy. But this year, government leasing shrank back to being about 5 or 6% of overall activity, and the private sector really poured back into the bulk of that leasing. Some of the major moves downtown, James Street, Bank of New York Mellon, we saw about 50% of leasing in the last year came from, we call fire, finance, insurance, and real estate. That's sort of the legacy industry that has historically been associated with the lower Manhattan office market. About 25% of leasing came from TAMI, which is technology, advertising, media, and information services companies. Those are the sort of new, kind of new economy businesses that have been locating downtown. James Street took a big lease, big expansion at Vesey Street. Moody's at 200 Liberty, Bank of New York Mellon at One World Trade Center. Axsome Therapeutics, another nearly 100,000 square lease at One World Trade. It's a biopharmaceutical company. And I wanted to list Arup as well. Arup is a longtime lower Manhattan tenant. They have been located at 77 Water Street, which I'm sure folks some here is converting from office to residential. They chose to stay in lower Manhattan, and they took a big lease of 100,000 square feet at 140 Broadway. So despite all the leasing activity, our vacancy rate downtown is still relatively high. We're about 22.2%. That's overall vacancy, including all three classes, office market classes. It has come down a little bit this year, not dramatically, but it has decreased a little bit. Rents have been overall steady. We still have a substantial pricing advantage in lower Manhattan compared to Midtown. And I think one of the big takeaways here, you know, we've heard a lot about the sort of flight to quality that's been the sort of constant mantra. If you talk to anybody in the real estate world since 2020, you hear the phrase flight to quality over and over again, almost ad nauseum. The idea that tenants are really gravitating towards sort of Class A buildings, even trophy Class A buildings. So newer, very heavily amenitized properties that are located close to transit. I think that trend has been continuing. And you certainly see some of the older buildings, older sort of Class B and lower Class B buildings still struggling downtown to attract tenants. I think one of the big changes here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, is that the residential conversion scene has really picked up speed over the last 2 or 3 years. So I think what we're seeing in the office market is that the office supply is increasingly becoming better attuned to the office demand. That's happening not just in lower Manhattan, but throughout Manhattan, all the Manhattan submarkets. All had a great year last year. The residential market continues to be very strong downtown. We set another record rent figure at $5,000 as the median rent in first quarter. That market is poised to continue to go from strength to strength. We have about just under 9,000 units that we are tracking in 29 residential buildings that are either under construction or in development. And if you're interested, we will have that full list of our residential pipeline that'll be updated and on our website later on this week. Just to clarify what we mean by that, buildings that are under construction are buildings that we simply walk around the neighborhood and see or visibly having construction, some work is happening. What we list as buildings being in development or planned are buildings that we have seen reported in the press in a way that we feel is sort of legitimate and firm that they are planning a project. It does not mean that all 29 of those buildings will actually come to fruition and that all 9,000 units will actually come online. The other big news that we're going to be reporting in our report this week is that the residential population in the neighborhood, we believe, has hit 70,000 for the first time. And that is a huge change for us. You go back 20, 25 years ago when there were barely 8,000 or 9,000 people living downtown. So hitting 70,000 is quite a milestone for Lower Manhattan. And that is largely as a result of we had about 2,000 new units that came online over the last year. That brings our total unit count in the district to a little over 37,000 residential units. As I mentioned earlier, the residential conversions are continuing apace. We saw 12 new projects that were announced last year. Those 12 projects will add about 2,600 units by themselves in those 12 buildings. Some of the notable new ones include 222 Broadway with about 798 units. 80 Broad was recently announced. We don't have a unit count for that building. 111 Wall is adding about 1,500 units in Lower Manhattan. One interesting building is 80 Pine, which is doing a partial conversion. That's a Rudin property, and they're converting the bottom of the building, actually, surprisingly, and keeping the crown of the building as office space. Retail market downtown, again, has continued to do well. We saw 90 new retailers open in the district in 2025. We have counted about 24 retailers that have closed. That number may be a little bit lower than the real number. We do our best to keep track of retail closings. Not an easy thing for us to do. I think we're a little bit more confident on the new retailer opened number. The 90 new openings is a 38% improvement year over year in terms of new openings downtown. We had Barcade on Portland Street, which has been long in the works and planned. Soccer Roof at 28 Liberty, which is one of a number of new sort of fitness and sports related businesses that have opened downtown. I think is a trend of that sort of business taking advantage of some more difficult to lease office and retail space that they're repositioning. Those entrepreneurs are repositioning as sort of interesting sort of fitness and sports focused businesses. And of course, Printemps at One Wall Street, sort of high end retail experience that we understand is doing quite well at that location. Coming up, we have a couple of new openings, most notably the Golden Mall on Broadway at 47 Broadway, which is expected to open very soon. They've been doing great work in there. It's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. It's going to be a sort of Chinese food hall. The original is in Flushing and Queens. It's got a great reputation. It's going to be a whole bunch of really interesting Asian food vendors that I think can do very well at that location. Hospitality has continued to do very, very well downtown. Our hotels are full and they're charging a lot for a room. Our ADR is the average daily room rate in the fourth quarter, hit a record in Q4. In fact, every single quarter in 2025 set a new quarterly record for room rates downtown. Our occupancy has also been very strong, 90% in the fourth quarter, also the highest on record, an increase of 2% year over year. Something that's interesting to note here is that at the end of the year, in the last 2 or 3 quarters, Lower Manhattan occupancy growth diverged from citywide occupancy. Based on the data that we get from CoStar, I'm not sure what the explanation for that is, or if that's a trend that we will see continuing into the current year. And that sort of concludes where we are with the market. Again, this data is all going to be available online, hopefully on Thursday, assuming no major hiccups. The report will be released. And now let's give you a little bit of an update on what we're working on for the spring and the summer. I think everybody knows that we are going to have a very, very busy spring and summer here in Lower Manhattan with the FIFA World Cup, with 8 games being played at MetLife. We expect a lot of people to be staying downtown and coming to the neighborhood to enjoy all the festivities around the World Cup and then the America 250 celebrations later in June and early in July. One program that we're working on that we're spending a lot of time on right now is Restore. So Restore is our first retail pop-up program that we've run at Downtown Alliance. The idea here is to try to activate some of the vacant storefronts that we have in Lower Manhattan, particularly in prominent locations on Broadway, Broad Street, Nassau Street, some of those areas, and bring in some interesting new retailers. What we're doing to make this program work, the Downtown Alliance is providing a one-time $15,000 cash grant to new businesses. These do sort of small pop-ups that will come in, hopefully launching around Memorial Day, running through Labor Day, so a more or less 3-month pop-up program. We have done an open call for applications. Our application period closed last Friday. We got about 370 applications, so the response has been really, really strong from a really fascinating, diverse range of businesses all over the city. A lot of really, really interesting retail concepts. And what we're really hoping with this is that through our support and the support of some of our property owners who are giving us space for free, that we'll be able to sort of provide a relatively low-risk way for some businesses and entrepreneurs to test out and do interesting concepts that you might not usually see in a CBD environment like Lower Manhattan. So stay tuned for that. We'll have more details of that in the coming weeks as we pair the retailers with space, and hopefully we'll have that open at the end of May. Next, we're also doing another storefront activation project. This is more looking at even vacant storefronts, even occupied storefronts, trying to do something that's really focused on the America 250 celebration, something that speaks to the extraordinarily deep revolutionary heritage that we have here in Lower Manhattan as one of the most important locations in sort of the story of the American founding and the American Revolution and the creation of the Constitution and the birth of American democracy here in Lower Manhattan. We've been partnering with the Gotham Center and Art on the Ave, which is a great local organization that I'm sure you're familiar with. We've done several projects with Art on the Ave. So we're developing a whole host of historical material that will live on our website. We're going to be doing sort of interesting, creative, artistic representations of important events in the neighborhood's revolutionary history that we're going to be locating on vacant and possibly even activated storefronts. We're hoping to have that up sometime around Memorial Day as well, and that will run again through most of the summer. And then finally, we are bringing back our Art All Around concert series, which we've been running for the last several years. This is going to be starting in May. That date here, running from May 13th through June 17th on Wednesdays. We're alternating it, starting initially in May at the Oculus, the World Trade Center site, and then moving to the plaza in front of 140 Broadway. These are great concerts. They've been super successful. A really great mix of, Latin and soul and jazz bands. We have dancing as well. They're really fun events, afternoons, if you're in the neighborhood, and looking for something to do on a Wednesday, on a nice day in May of June. Really encourage you to come out and join us. And then finally, two of our LM Live events. We have a film screening tomorrow, Hitch, which is, I believe, a Will Smith rom-com.
Yes.
Yes, something,
Cameron
saw
Diaz.
a date a long time ago. I don't really remember what happened.
From King of Queens, that it's a romantic comedy in the spirit of Valentine's Day.
And then Gonzo New York, which is a new book by Jonathan Mahler that gets into the sort of history of 80s New York.
Yes.
And mostly golf in New York in the 80s. Gotten great reviews, and he's going to be joining us for a book talk on March 10th at the Downtown Association. And you can find more information on these events on our website. Please sign up and join us. And then finally, this is our the website for our research page. Again, all of the information, all of our research and our data about Lower Manhattan is available for free on our website. Stay tuned for later on this week when we're going to be updating that with the data that you just saw tonight.
Perfect.
And that's it. Happy to take questions.
I have a question. For the Restore, is there a specific type of retail that you guys are?
So we are excluding food and beverage. The permitting and issues with getting sort of food and beverage retailers open on a short timeline is just too complicated for us to handle, unfortunately. So we're looking at sort of outside the box things you wouldn't see. We've gotten a lot of fashion tenants, a lot of like interesting fashion brands. We've gotten interest from bookstores of different stripes, toy stores, vintage furniture stores, home goods retailers, artisan furniture manufacturers, artists doing sort of unique treatments for things. An independent record label is interested. So we're trying to do stuff that's sort of wouldn't usually see in the neighborhood.
Got it. And it starts in May?
We're hoping to get the businesses open by Memorial Day weekend, yeah.
For how long? Really?
3 months. Yeah.
By any chance, do you know the vacancy, how Dye's vacancy compares to?
In terms of retail,
Well, you gave it 22% overall, right?
it's very similar. We have that number in the report. I don't have it off the top of my head. The vacancy rates for the office market for Midtown, the 3 Manhattan submarkets, Lower Manhattan, Midtown, and Midtown South, have been trending in similar directions. I think Midtown is a little bit better than we are right now, but not dramatically so.
Are there
Pretty
any,
much everybody's over 20%.
it's better to be under 20%.
We would prefer to be under 20%. We were in 2019, we were around 11%.
That's perfect. And do you see any other types of office tenants, like not the high-end corporates, right? Like maybe office tenants who would typically not get an office space, be interested in, getting a space because it's cheaper, more affordable, there's more space.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we have, Lower Manhattan's office market has always had a substantial pricing advantage compared to the other Manhattan markets. Which means that Lower Manhattan has always been attractive to government tenants, not-for-profit tenants, sort of smaller businesses that are in a sort of early or growth stage have always been attractive to Lower Manhattan. And we're certainly seeing a lot of leasing in that direction. I think, this year, 2025, we did see a lot of big, sort of large leases taking 300, 400,000 square feet. But even since COVID, the leasing activity hasn't really been driven by those smaller, 20, 15, 10,000 square foot leases. And there's still a lot of room. I think one of the positives that we've seen, even with a lot of that older Class B office space, which is where historically the cheaper, the more affordable office space was located, even with a lot of those buildings converting to residential, we still have a substantial pricing advantage compared to Midtown and Midtown South. We still have a decent amount of relatively affordable office space still in North Town.
Have you guys, I mean, maybe it's too early, but have you guys noticed any sort of interesting patterns or frictions with mixing the resi population and the office tenants all in a neighborhood, which perhaps?
No, I don't think anything that's different from what we have seen for years. And it's always going to be a challenge for us. I think moving forward and how we integrate those two populations and make that work. There are populations that certainly have different needs and different interests in the community, but it's a big enough neighborhood and there's enough space to go around that we can accommodate both.
Okay. Alice.
Thanks, Josh, and Taina, and hi all. So Josh, you probably could imagine, well, first let me just ask a question I've always been curious about, what Ned is referring to in terms of the kind of mix that this community used to embrace, and that is really, frankly, something that we're losing. How many buildings, if you have this number in FIDI, are still commercial, and how many are residential? Do you have those numbers? I mean, it's not been something to be today, but or along Water Street specifically, for example, how many now are residential, and how many remain commercial?
We do have that. I don't have that off the top of my head. I can get back to you with that, Alice. In terms of the overall mix, there's about 84 million square feet of residential space. I'm sorry, 84 million square feet of commercial office space in the downtown market currently. So there's about 84 million square feet of office space. There's probably about 30 million square feet of 25 to 30 million square feet of residential. Maybe a little bit less than that. I think the mix in terms of, if you look at it from square footage, it's about 80-20 office residential at the moment.
80
And in terms of
20.
Water Street, yeah, about 80% office. In terms of square footage, to be clear, it's not quite answering your question in terms of the number of buildings, but off the top of my head, square footage is about 80-20. And remember, when buildings convert from office to residential, you usually lose square footage in that conversion process in terms of what's actually saying, yeah.
Right. I think it'd be an interesting statistic to grapple with. I mean, there's a concern that at some point, you won't have to worry about the mix, it becomes so fundamentally residential, particularly
Yeah, I
areas
think
along the waterfront.
we've done some thinking and some sort of internal analysis on that. We're a long way from a point where it becomes a majority residential. And you have to remember, there are still huge office buildings in Lower Manhattan, like, the World Trade Center, where you have, 9-10 million square feet of office space. Brookfield Place, which alone is 5 or 6 million square feet of office. Big buildings like 55 Water Street that are, 3.5, 3.6 million square feet. So even with a small number, we have a small number of very, very large buildings that I think will help preserve that fundamentally commercial character for some time.
Okay, thanks. Interesting. I had asked you, and I saw you recently in another meeting, about the POPs. Obviously, with a population of, I think you mentioned 70,000, these public spaces become incredibly critical. And we are at the 10-year anniversary of a text amendment that you at the Downtown Alliance pushed avidly for. The Water Free Text Amendment. And, it would be a really helpful to the community and important to identify for us what is going on in those public spaces, in the arcades that have been closed. And specifically, we had asked about 175 water and 77 water. And I just was curious, were you able to find out anything about those spaces? And moreover, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
77 Water, as you know, is a residential conversion project. That was an office building. It is converting to residential. It was sold from Sage Realty to Van Barton. Van Barton Group is doing the residential conversion there. I know that they have a plan to redesign that Pops Plaza. They do need a chairperson certification from the Department of City Planning to do that. And it is my understanding that they're in the process of working with DCP on what that redesign will look like. 175 Water is the WSA building. It's the old AIG headquarters. I know they're doing some work around that small public plaza there and the arcade around there. I do not know, unfortunately, what their plans are for that space.
Right. So if I could ask, and we ask this a lot, if the Alliance could help us out in getting a little bit closer to understanding what is happening with those public spaces. We have 100,000 square feet of arcades and many public spaces that align these areas, and they become really critical parts of our infrastructure. And somehow or other, we can't quite seem to find a way to get updated and to really start to understand when these spaces are going to be open again, and specifically the ones you've just mentioned, the 175 Water, which has 2 floors, we are closed and we don't know for how long. If we could get a little more specific on that and get your help in working with DCP to just, now we're at the 10-year anniversary, it seems like a great time to just look at Water Street. What happened? What do we got? What do we don't have? You know, and that would be
Yeah, great
great if
question.
we could count on you for that in the future, some point soon. Is that something, I don't know if I'm being
Yes,
heard.
I mean, look, again, it's largely a question for city planning and for the property owners. You really can't do anything with those public spaces without going through some design review process with city planning. Obviously, they are in a leadership transition now, as most of city government is. They have no chair to certify anything. Hopefully that will be resolved sooner rather than later. It'd be good for the city, period. But we can certainly reach out to the Manhattan Planning Office and speak to some of our property owners and see if we can sort of help facilitate some sort of a briefing.
Have
We
you guys
have
had
all-
the committee?
We have also reached out to them and we'll look forward to that. I think it'd be great to have a kind of sort of just a review, you know, it's a decade and I think it'd be useful for everyone. So I'm happy to help with that. Let's just say that and keep you abreast and you'll keep us abreast. Okay,
Yes.
thanks. And thanks, Nada.
Sure.
Michael?
From time to time, we hear about an oversupply of residential units, and those residential units are being warehoused, especially in terms of condos rather than rentals. 29 projects in the pipeline. Do you have any thoughts about that?
You know, the condo market and the rental market have performed very differently in Lower Manhattan. The condo market did well last year, both in terms of sales and pricing. I think we have heard anecdotally, we don't have great data, at least not to the same degree that we have for the office market for how the residential market is doing. My understanding anecdotally is that the new rentals that are coming online are doing very well, and are leasing quickly, are being well occupied. Some of the condo product, we've heard anecdotally has not been as successful. And I think that's reflected in the pipeline. We have about 70% of the new units that are planned to be rental and not condo. So I think you are right, Michael, there was a bit of an overbuild in terms of condominium products, especially pre-COVID going into the last couple of years. I think the rental market is different and those units are moving fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question.
Sure.
So out of the 22% vacancy that we have, do you guys have a way, or is there a way to categorize these buildings or, you know, we have class A, B,
Mhm.
C, to get to like, these guys need to go, like, they're.
Yeah, we have in our report that will come out on Thursday, we do break down the vacancy rates by the building classes by A and B. We don't really have any class C properties downtown.
Sure.
It's really A and B properties. And certainly the A properties, the class A buildings are performing better than the class B buildings. And I think you see a lot of those residential conversions are happening in the sort of older class B office style.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you go A, B, and the Bs are still okay. You don't have a B minus or a C plus that.
I think that the real estate industry uses A and B. You've seen a lot of people on the brokerage side talking about sort of trophy class A.
Sure.
There's some folks, and then CBRE has tried to move away from the A and B designation, has been talking about sort of commodity buildings, which are sort of the B buildings, versus, I can't remember what they're calling the A buildings, but it's all also sort of,
Amenity bridge?
yeah, it's more an art than a science as to whether or not a building is considered a Class A versus a Class B building.
Yes, exactly. And I think
Most
that
owners will say their buildings are Class A buildings. even if
everything is a
they don't
trophy.
really think they are, yeah.
Everything is a
But the tenants
trophy
might not agree.
until you visit the building.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Alice.
So I just had one other question. As things move in, as we see more and more residential conversion, does the Alliance's mission change in any way in terms of the numbers? In other words, you're a bid and it's a business improvement district, but yet you have more and more residential folk. How does that, if at all, change the mission of the Alliance?
Yeah, that's a totally fair question. I think, the Alliance was founded in 1995. Obviously, when the Alliance was created, it was a much more heavily commercial district. There were very, very few residents downtown. We have always encouraged residential development. We've always wanted to see this neighborhood develop into what it is now, and I think what it is increasingly becoming as a mixed-use community. I think in terms of our core service delivery, our clean and safe programs, I don't think that really changes much. When we're moving the snow around, we're removing snow and we're providing assistance to unhoused populations downtown, and working with the first precinct to ensure the neighborhood is safe and welcoming. I think that mission is consistent whether you work here or live here or are visiting here. I think when we look at planning projects and how we approach, retail attraction, for instance, that's going to shift based on having more residents in the neighborhood. Retail mix in the neighborhood is going to have to change to respond to and adapt to having much more of a residential population than, entirely serving an office population. I think it's a good thing, certainly for folks who live in the neighborhood and have lived in the neighborhood for a long time.
People who also live and work in the
Yep.
neighborhood, right? There's a.
So I think it's a complicated question, something that we're going to have to sort of continually address as we move forward. But again, I think in terms of our core delivery and what we really do and are set to do, I think those services are beneficial for everybody who's downtown.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Tina.
Sure. That's it, right? We don't have any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
This has been great. I'm super interested in seeing the report come out on.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we'll email it.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully Thursday.
Thursday, Friday, end of the week. Perfect. All right, so we have one more thing, thank you so much. One more thing on the agenda, which Zach has added to the agenda. We discussed it on Friday and added it to the agenda, which is kind of a look ahead on the projects that we are going to be reviewing as a committee. This is informational, and it's for, folks on the committee to be able to research it. If there are drawings that have been submitted, have a little bit of time to review the drawings and come to the meetings prepared with questions or not questions, or prior to the meeting, if there's information that the committee members find missing or would like answers on, to just raise it before we actually get to the date, before we get to a date that the applicants are presenting in the room. And it's a good tracking system for us to know our workload and manage the meeting times. So we have 65 Franklin. It is strange to talk in a room with no one here. With me and Lucy only, but in front of me, Lucy, no. So we have 65 Franklin Street, which we are going to be reviewing in March, and 101 Franklin Street. Jason,
You're doing a great job, the two of you.
thank you. All right. I guess I think we are good. Was that Alice?
Well, Nana, I see a number of the folk certainly from 101 Franklin represented on the chat here. What, how would you feel this is best moved forward? Do you want folks to just ask questions to you, or do we want to interface with the folks on the chat, which is extraordinary that they're here and probably very helpful to people who have questions? I don't know, or are we saving this all for March? What would you like to?
I just would like the committee members to be aware of us having these items on the agenda and reach out to Zach or myself if they can't find the documents, and review the documents before coming to the meetings. I'm not prepared to discuss any of the projects right now.
Yeah, Alice,
We-
sorry to jump in. Alice, none of the applicants were asked to come make any kind of presentation. We're just trying to get ahead of the 8 ball, to Netta's point. So sorry to interrupt, Netta.
No, that's completely right.
I greatly appreciate that. I think that's a terrific idea, and I thank you for highlighting these projects. They're they're great projects, potentially impactful, certainly, and yeah, thank you.
You got it. Perfect. And if there are like any suggestions on the agenda or how information is distributed among the committee that you guys have, and you think it's going to improve the efficiency of our reviews when we meet, please, let's discuss them and come up with a better way of moving forward if there are any suggestions.
You had mentioned earlier, Netta, and I thought it was a terrific idea to do a kind of summary sheet. And again, I'd be happy to volunteer, or anybody else who thinks they could help there on what the sort of critical aspects are. I mean, obviously, Department of City Planning, the ZAP portal offers all of the documents, but maybe we could do a kind of summary version to send around to committee members so that they, have something that's a summary of all of the most critical features or something like that. A plan, the project description, the summary that they provide of that description, a little bit of the history of the project, maybe a 2-pager or something. I don't know, but that would be.
I can put together a chart or a document, like 1-pager that kind of summarizes or has the categories of what the committee members would probably have questions are, and it kind of like very overall, and it's not just specific to these projects. This is kind of for as almost like a cheat sheet that committee members can have that says, okay, this is it a ULURP application? Is it just advisory for review? What kind of an application are we reviewing? What is the ask of the applicant? Just clearly stated. And is it square footage? Is it additional bulk? Is it encroaching on some sort of easement? Whatever it is, so it's very clear on this chart. So we're not looking for the very basic information that we need to review. I can take a stab at it and then send it to committee members for comments of what we need on that sheet.
That's an incredibly kind offer. I vote yes for that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so would I, Netta. That's, I was going to actually suggest something almost exactly the same. Reviewing the documents is kind of difficult to really gather. I'm not expert in this, even though I've been on this committee for a while. So to really understand what the issues are for each of these key applications that we should be focusing on, and maybe a pointer to what document would be most relevant. But yeah, the kind of thing that you were just describing, I think would be really, really helpful.
Well, I almost think that the things that go on this cheat sheet should be very factual of, what it is and what they're asking for without any interpretation of any committee members or me, to just get the facts down, and then we can discuss the benefits of Patrick.
Yeah, and that's a great offer, Netta, and I want all the committee members to be conscious of our fellow volunteers' time in doing something like that. But everybody gets a link within the agenda itself when it's emailed out by Lucy. You get a link to the application materials in the portal at the Department of City Planning. Most often, that's where the applications are, to the ZAP portal. There's a kind of an overarching document called the project description or description of the project. I forget exactly what it's called. That's, if you look at the first 3 to 5 pages of that document, you're going to find out exactly that information that you're looking for, the history of the building, where it exists, or the land, and specifically what are the specific land use actions that the applicant is requesting of the department. So not to supplant what Ned is offering to do, that if you really need that information to zero in on, that's the place to look.
Patrick, that's absolutely right. I just think sometimes people have a little moment of trouble navigating those documents, but I think that's 100% right. Maybe we send along that project description as a separate file
I
right
actually
off the
think
bat.
that's
Maybe that
better
would
than-
help, yeah.
I think maybe we'll pull those out and we will,
I did upload them, and those are the links that are referring to there.
those are the only the project description.
What you requested from Zach, and I did, and though they're in those links, he simplified it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
He
so when I
didn't
draft
put
the
all-
resolutions, for example, that's where I pull all that key information from. I'm not
Yeah, I think people just
a
need
great
to
sleuth
put
here.
on the link, and it's been simplified.
Right.
Well then, I think that takes care of that.
The only thing that's generally missing from those files that we send around is a little bit of the history of the properties sometimes. So we might be able to find a little bit about that. Not just the history of when the building was built, but earlier conversions, earlier attempts at something that didn't flesh out. And sometimes that's helpful to see, you know, different moments about what had happened with the project over time.
Well, those we discussed during a review time, right?
Yeah.
Do we have any more? Perfect. So we can close tonight's meeting if there are no more questions or any other items to discuss. And we will meet March 9th.
Megan, second,
Anyone?
can someone second it for me?
Second.
Meeting?
Second.
Second.
Second. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Russ.
much, Ned and Lucy. Good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.